everyone, and let us know in the chat where you're watching from and where you're joining in and what you teach. But we're going to be talking about what does life look like after COVID, and hopefully it's almost over. Danielle's joining me today, and I don't know, Danielle, I'm a little scared because I was talking to Leslie in Australia, and she said another strand was coming.
Okay, well, if we've learned anything this year, it's that we know how to pivot and we are all ready to pivot. So, yeah, we've got it. If it comes again, we're ready.
Yeah, so let us know where you're joining from in the chat, and then we're going to start talking about what does life look like. This is going to be kind of a conversation, but we also need your help. So it is going to be an interactive session as well, where you're going to add some of your thoughts into the conversation. So my name is Stephanie Howe. I'm an instructional technology. Sorry, I was reading the comments, and yeah, monitor and adjust. And I'm an instructional technology coach in Pickerington, Ohio. And then I have Danielle with me as well.
Hello, I'm Danielle McKernan. I'm a digital learning lead in the north of Ireland.
And so we both kind of experienced COVID. I feel like everyone kind of has. But before we get started, if you could join the Google group if you haven't yet, and this will allow you to have access to the slides. And it will also allow you to take part and be interactive in this session. So I went ahead, I put the link. If you're not in the group yet, go ahead and just click join. And then if not, the slides are also in the chat. So I'm going to throw the slides back in the chat. If you want to see the slides, follow along. If you want to make a copy, feel free. There's also amazing links that Danielle has added, and I've added some videos. So if you need those resources after this conversation, everything is in this slide deck. So make sure you kind of view that slide deck and kind of hold on to it. And then with that, let's kind of look at our agenda for today. So with our agenda, we're going to be talking about a strategy. So we've learned so much during COVID. Have you, Danielle? I know I have.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So we've pivoted. We've learned how to let me look back at that slide deck. And we learned how to pivot and kind of go into remote learning with what we need to do. And we're going to kind of see what kind of needs to happen. All right, go ahead and refresh on those slides and let me know if the permission is good now. Also, benefits. We're going to look at what has been good for students and teachers. Have you seen any benefits throughout COVID and the pandemic, Danielle?
Huge. I mean, I would say one of the main things that we've noticed in Ireland is that for so long we've been trying to do the 4 C's, and now actually it's happening, and it's hugely exciting. So there has been a great acceleration, and yeah, we just want to build on that now, don't we?
Yeah, and I think too, some teachers had to get outside of their comfort zone. And let us know in the chat, like, were there benefits? There were some non-benefits, but there were a lot of good things that also came out of this. And then we're going to +1 some of these strategies with, okay, I know a lot of times my teachers were in like, there's a fire and we got to get it out mode. Where next year I want, now that they know how to use all these tools, they know how to, kind of have some of these hybrid and video type lessons. How do we keep that going next year, but add a +1? So how do we make those lessons even better now that we know how to do it? What do we need to fix and kind of look into and that kind of stuff? And then we're going to be talking about next steps. So what is life after COVID going to look like? How is that going to look? And we would love for you guys to share your ideas as well. And we'll be going probably between these 2 different slide decks. I think that was the right deck. So let me open up this one as well. And if you could hop on both of these slide decks, we're going to be kind of going back and forth, but we want to hear your voice. So I'm going to allow anyone to view this one, but if you want to comment, because I have trust issues, please join that Google group. That will let us go into the revision history if we get any meat bomber or slide bombers or anything like that. And then we're able to kind of collaborate in a safe place. So right there, you can see our first topic is going to be video, and you'll see all these different topics. So go ahead and join this slide deck, and then this one has like all the information, I guess. Okay, so we want to know, how are you using video in the classroom? So as we're going to have this conversation, go ahead to slide 2 and start adding. How do you see the benefits with students? How do you see the benefits with teachers? Is there any +1s that we can do to improve video for next school year? And then how do you envision video in the classroom next school year? So Danielle, what benefits did you see?
Well, we always knew video was about, but it really earned its value whenever the pupils were at home and we were able to work asynchronously and deliver our content that way. And it meant that, pupils could just move along at their own pace. You could record a small video of the key content that you wanted them to learn, and then really focus later in, for example, your synchronous lives on the application of the content. So it really, it greatly added its value. And those are video collections that we've now got, and we've got for many years to come, and that are always there. So while it felt like a bit of work at the time, it was beneficial because we've now got this library and collection of content that we can use to send out to pupils to support them as and when they need it.
Yeah, and I think video in the classroom was huge for students. We were hybrid, so we saw our students twice a week, and then we saw the other group the other 2 days, and then Wednesdays was like a time for our teachers to collaborate. And with that video, students were able to use like closed captions. They were able to rewind their teacher. They were able to pause. It helped building some of that background knowledge. It also kind of allowed teachers to save some time. And we saw teachers, I don't know if anybody used like Edpuzzle, or I think it's Play Pause It is another one. I think it's like one where you can add questions and force kids to watch the video and monitor. But it allowed our teachers to like clone themselves in a way that wasn't really able to happen. And so with video, one of the things that I think is really important, it's called sound on and sound off. This is a really good strategy that you could use for next year. So with our +1s, we're talking about next year and what this could look like. So with sound on and sound off, there's a YouTube video that you can watch with this topic, and right in here are the links for it, but I'm going to throw this link right into the chat if you want to make a copy of it. But I know sometimes later the chat takes a while to catch up. If you're watching the recording, it usually takes 24 hours. But this is sound on and sound off. So students, they watch the video, the sound is off. Then they do a think, pair, share. What did you see? What do you think is happening in this video? Because you can't hear it. And then students re-watch that video, and this time the sound is on, and they're taking notes. So they take notes with the sound off, take notes with the sound on, and then the students do another think, pair, share, and they talk about, okay, now that the sound's on, this is what I've heard. So again, it can just be a great way. I would not do this with a long video. I would make sure it's kind of short because they do have to re-watch it twice. But this is really good for your EL learners, because in videos with like lots of graphics, they kind of get lost. So they just need to watch it once with the sound off to see everything, and then they can listen with the sound on to hear it. It also might help them if that you turn down the speed of the video so that it's going at a slower pace. And then some students might need it at a faster pace. I know when I'm listening to podcasts, I bump it up so I can listen to more and learn more. But I know some students, they need it slower. So we got to know which students need what. And with video, you're able to do that. All right, Danielle's going to talk about her +1.
So another point about teachers and video, what we found as well in school is that it really helped teachers engage more with the pedagogy of learning. So for example, looking at cognitive load theory, it really helped teachers understand that when they're in the classroom, say, or if they were doing a live and they were given a long lecture to pupils, that they just can't process it all. So whenever we looked at videos and making asynchronous videos, it really helped to learn the idea that, a video should be about 7 minutes long, really, for the pupils to be able to process it. So that was a great benefit of it. It was something that we had tried to instill before with our teachers, but it was difficult for them to really get it. But now looking at it through this digital lens, it really helped it click. It helped the idea, stick with teachers. So that definitely was a huge benefit for teachers that we found with videos. So then with pupils as well, what I really believe now is that pupils will be able to go global with video. I mean, there's such huge opportunities out there for us to connect with other educators, with pupils to connect with other pupils throughout the world. And there's a movements now, for example, the Grid Pals movement with Flipgrid, that are just at our fingertips and are ready to use. One of the things we found as well with our pupils was that they were very reluctant to show their faces on camera. And I really believe that's something we need to work on. During remote learning, I mean, we didn't really push the issue because we were just so glad that they showed up, but I think going forward, it's something that's going to stay. I think more employers are going to have opportunities for their employees to work from home. So there's going to be more video meetings. There's going to be people having to engage with other people online. And I think that's something that we really just need to start to develop in our pupils, those that are nervous about it. So doing this Grid Pals is a really fun way of doing it. I mean, they're interacting with people their own age, and it's in a fairly low risk environment. And I think this is one thing that I'm definitely going to look at going forward this year. So improving people's confidence on video and giving them an opportunity to have a voice and an opportunity to connect with other pupils globally.
Yeah, I love that global connection. It's like they have a whole new audience of people. And I think COVID made that easier. It tore down some of those barriers and the walls of video being like scared to get on. And then for next school year, I mean, you could use video to flip your learning. You could use it as a blended learning. One of my favorite new strategies that I've been hearing from the Modern Teacher Classroom Project, I think is what it's, Modern Project something. I'll have to look it up. But their suggestion is have the video the first like 5 to 10 minutes of the kids walking in. And that frees you up as a teacher. And again, every kid can turn down the playback speed. Every kid can pause. They can take notes or be interactive with it. And that frees you up again to take attendance, to check in with any students that you need to. So as students enter that room, they're watching that video and you're able to kind of check in, pull small groups. And again, it's okay if every kid doesn't finish at the same time because you're creating that flexible and you're creating that blended learning classroom. And over here, you can see there are links as well. Anything else with the next school year, Danielle?
Yeah, basically, I really like the idea, of supporting absent students. If we're down at that point, Stephanie. I mean, again, the technology was always there. Literally, how I supported my pupils who were isolating from COVID at home and those pupils that were in school. The way that I supported them and made sure they all had an equity of education provision was just by putting my iPad on my computer screen, and that was it. Or taking my iPad and bringing it down into a group of pupils and leaving my iPad there with the kid in the lesson and then be able to work collaboratively with the others. So simple, but why did we never use it? Why did I never use it before? And I just think that, being forced to do it, needs must situation, really just opened us up to the possibilities there. And when I was trying to find a solution to this problem that I was faced with pupils having to self-isolate, with the research that I did online, it was Beatty's work. So I've linked it there. There's like a video of him there beside the HyFlex. And that's an hour-long video, and he is excellent. He just goes into detail of everything that he has done there. And I mean, he's been doing this work 15 years, so he's an expert on it. I mean, so Dr. Brian Beatty, to me, was the go-to person to try to find, the best approaches for this. And in the other link there, it's just, if you prefer text, it's basically the full EdTech book he's made available for everyone. And that's what I used whenever I was trying to figure out HyFlex mode, and it worked superbly for us. And he's been doing this for, as I said, 15 years. And so it's something that we can continue with. So if a pupil is sick, You know, we do have people sometimes that have to go off with illnesses. We have people who have special needs who need time away from school. There's no reason now I can see for them just to join in with the class the way we have been able to do. You know, it's just, I can't believe I didn't use it more before.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I love what our people who are watching as you're filling this in. So, like they're saying benefits, it's self-paced, students can move ahead of others. It's okay that they can replay and watch again, flipped lessons, builds in differentiation. That's a huge one. Breaking the content into smaller sections. And I think that's true. When you're making a video, you do want to think about skills rather than like a whole standard. And some standards might be one video. It just depends on the standard. But I think that's so great idea of breaking it into smaller sections. Like if you're adding fractions, one video on just changing the denominator, another video on how to add a cross, another video on simplifying. And I think then you're able to also differentiate, because then you're like, okay, this student is missing this step. Where I think sometimes, like before COVID, we were just like, go, go, go. And it was like, oh, the kid just doesn't know how to add fractions. Well, what part of that are they not getting? And so I think when we chunk our videos, we can provide that differentiation instruction to that student again. Hey, watch this part. Or, hey, you got this. You can go ahead and watch this part, wherever you're at.
The actual making of a video really forces a teacher to sit down and think, what are those skills?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you've been teaching the same thing for many years, you just become very automated in it. Whereas when you have to sit down and make a video, you have to be really clear about what are the steps, and it really forces you to sit down and think about that.
Yeah. And we don't have Canvas, but someone was also suggesting using Canvas quizzes, which I've kind of heard about. I think it's very similar to Edpuzzle, I think. But then you can also do that. Yeah, parent-teacher aides can use this also, and kind of understand and support the students right where they're at. I love that, Kelly. And the next school year, using it as bell ringers or morning meetings or tutorials. So great job, guys. All right, we're going to go ahead and go to checklist. However, keep on adding to this as you think of stuff. This is an ongoing, looking at document where we can gather ideas. If you have links, hyperlink them in there. If you know resources, hyperlink them right into there. But we are going to go ahead to checklist. All right. So with checklists, we want to know, how do you use checklists in your classroom? I know for our teachers, checklists were kind of popular before COVID, but right when COVID came, it became like a hot topic. Did your teachers use checklists, Danielle?
Do you know, we're not as far on with this as you are. So this is definitely an area for development for me.
Yeah. So what my teachers did is on Monday, they had to send out a weekly agenda for the week. So that way parents knew, students knew, everybody knew what was due by that next Monday. Everything was due on the Monday. So everything was kind of in that cycle. And so with checklists, students started to become owners of their learning. And a checklist was pretty simple. Let me see if I can pull one up, because I know sometimes it's what is she talking about? I need to see it. And they can look any way that you want to create them. A lot of my teachers use Google Slides, and then they were able to hyperlink outside of the resources, or say, hey, this is in Google Classroom, or wherever they wanted to point the student to. And it was just a simple, here's everything you have to do, and here's when you have to do it by. I don't know if I'm going to pull up a good one. And it was just kind of helpful for the kids because they knew what was expected for the students. So right here, this is a very simple one that could be made. You have to do at least 45 minutes. And I can go ahead and I'll make a copy of this, and I can throw this resource as well in the chat, but they can be pretty, or they can just be really, really simple, which is really nice. to like have that availability for your students and for you to know how you want to make these. Let me get rid of his name. Okay. And so right here, this was like math for the week. And you can just see iReady was one assignment. And then they just said like done or whatever, slides presentation, separate slides activity, ed puzzle. And the kids had all this in like one place for the week and allowed them to just kind of know what was coming up, what do I need to do, what have I done, what do I need assistance on. And another thing that some of my teachers taught their students was this comment feature. So maybe right here, they're like, how much time do I have done? And then they can tag their teacher. And then that teacher would be able to get a notification that this student needs some help or needs some clarification, or, hey, can you check this? Can you check, make sure I'm doing this right? And then it was that ongoing conversation between the student and the teacher. And again, some of these were like really pretty. Some of them were very basic, like this one. Also, there was like these optional lessons that the kids could do too. So like a Google Meet, I would love for you to attend one of these because I want to see you. So sometimes, those might be optional. Sometimes those are required. And here it says like, do this last, because this was like their exit ticket to make sure that they understood everything from the week. And so like do all this in order and then do this last, which is kind of helpful for kids to know, like, okay, I need help with this, so I can skip iReady math and I can do this activity. Like I know how to do it. And it made them not get stuck, because I know with hybrid teaching, it's hard for teachers. They had a full class in front of them and kids at home emailing them questions. And so when you're creating these like weekly checklists, it helped, because then you were like, okay, if you don't know how to do this activity, email me, comment, but work on the next thing. Work on the next thing until we can meet, because like teachers are going crazy because it's a lot. And then it kind of allows kids to have that ownership of their learning as well. It could be self-paced. You could differentiate this really easily. So maybe like you can see here, it says blue group. So maybe I have a red group with different assignments. Maybe I have, a different one box for every kid, or maybe I add some choice into this. So any way you kind of think about it, like you could open it up for additional resources as well. And again, it allows the kids to know like what needs done, what can we do, what is a must do, can do, may do type of activity. You can conference with students. So again, like looking at this, I can go, okay, talk to me on the next day I see you in person. We're going to just talk that quick 5 minutes, and then that kid might be able to go. Also, if you have parapros, I know that was a big thing in our share out for video, and have them. Maybe you could say, hey, can you work with this student on this activity? They're not done with it yet. And then you can also kind of start to track those different mastery levels and put everything in that one space, because we've got stuff everywhere. And I know like LMSs are helping with creating that one space, but I think it's nice for some kids to just quickly check mark what they've done. And I just saw what Andrea said, Canvas or another LMS can work like a checklist. Yeah, so if you kind of work with your kids on your LMS, whatever you use, because I know there's so many, you can have the students. I know in Canvas, they can't go on to the next activity if you lock it, I think, which I had some teachers, we use Google Classroom, so you don't have that ability like to quickly do that, but they were using a password website that locked, like the kids needed a password to unlock the activity. And it was working really well because there were some kids that were going on without a teacher check or like whatever. And so I can look up that password website if anybody wants it, but we were using that as well. And it just helped keeping that learning path so that the kids could be successful. So my +1 is using the grid method. It's a really amazing resource. And this whole video, it goes over the whole process. It's a pretty lengthy process. It's by the Teach Better team. But in here, again, there's so many hyperlinks. There's resources that you're able to review. And you can see right here, like there's so many examples and resources. And this just helps keep everything kind of in one spot. And it allows, it partners up with depth of knowledge. So right here, you can see DOK level 1, it's that basic recall of skills. You focus in on this area. DOK 2, and you keep like going up. And it just, but make sure you're asking and working on tasks that aren't just at that DOK level 1 level. So I liked this model because it helped me differentiate and make sure I was asking those higher level questions for my students, because a lot of times I was just sticking at that DOK level 1 just because that's where it was like safe and I was getting really comfortable answers. Because, you know, DOK level 1 is like those textbook answers you can memorize, you can recall those answers from the textbook, and it was comfortable. So I had to push myself out of that comfort zone to reach those higher levels of DOK to make sure that my students were being successful. You want to talk about your level 1 or your +1?
So yeah, just to say the checklist, it's a fantastic idea, Stephanie. I love it. Thank you for explaining that. Because when we use Google Classroom as well, and what we've noticed is that, you know, it's not very visual. So in Google Classroom, there's just basically a series of assignments. And then what we found our pupils doing was commenting under random assignments to ask the teacher a question. They were commenting under assignments that really had no relation to the actual thing they were doing. So being able to add the comment directly on what it is they want assistance with is superb. So I really like that idea. So for my +1 then, I have just built on your idea, the idea that, you know, pupils can move along at their own pace. So if they're moving along at their own pace, then there are those pupils who finish that bit earlier or have, you know, and have understood the material in a faster time than some other pupils have. So perhaps that's the time where we can build in some of their genius hour, their own passion projects, because I mean, what holds us back from putting time into these you know, projects where the pupils can have their own self-agency and work through it. And it's because we always say, well, I know in my classroom, in my school, we say there isn't enough time, there's too much content to cover. And probably what's happened in that situation is that we're trying to move the pupils along all at the same pace. But they don't all have to go, as we can see from your example there, Stephanie, at the same pace. They can take ownership of their learning and move on through it themselves. So really, that would be my +1, the idea of trying to get a bit more personalized instruction into the classroom. And then while pupils, for example, are going off and learning their own, you know, directing their own learning through their passion projects, it frees you up to have time with those pupils that need that bit more support. So really, it's a win-win all round. Those pupils are, you know, who have moved on through the content quicker than others. I mean, it's great if they can then go off and support other pupils. We know how beneficial that is, where they can even deepen their understanding by working with peers. But equally, it's nice to give them that motivation that they can go off and work on something independently. So that would absolutely be my +1, more personalized instruction. And being able to support each pupil at the particular stage they're at, and allowing opportunities for them to go off and explore their own learning that they want as well in the classroom.
Yeah, I think Genius Hour is huge. And I think we find that kids really enjoy it. And it really can help those like soft skills of collaboration, communication, creativity, if we just allow it in our classroom. All right. And then again, those checklists, they can help with the differentiation. They can help you with blended learning. They allow you to conference with your students one-on-one. You can also, the absent students, if they miss a day, they're able to kind of catch up on that checklist. And then again, working on that metacognition and the self-regulation. And again, Danielle put in nice links for you to review if you need any additional resources. Okay, on our shared document, it looks like, I don't know if a lot of people are not using checklists, But right here, we do have teachers at the high school created hyperdocs. So yeah, hyperdocs can be a really good way to put everything into one space. So you're able to put everything in that one space, and teachers are then able to collaborate. That was huge. I love that it says teachers at the high school, because it wasn't one teacher, I'm assuming. Now I could be wrong. It wasn't one teacher creating this hyperdoc. It was multiple teachers. And that is what's really good with Google, is you can share a hyperdoc with the group of teachers that are teaching the same subject, and everyone was able to add to it. That is another thing I would love to continue to see next school year. I don't know about you, Danielle. Did you see a lot more collaboration?
Absolutely, and we'll talk about that later. And it was, yeah, it was a huge benefit this year. People broke out of their classroom walls and began working together within the school and globally. It was enormous, and that's definitely a keeper.
And I think too, and maybe it was like math, let's say. Well, then you had your spec ed teachers who could also get into this document and add their perspective or add what their students needed. And it didn't just benefit the students with disabilities, it benefited all students, because they were providing all these extra scaffolds that some students might need that aren't on an IEP. So that's some of the things that I saw, was just that collaboration piece of, and it was really cool to also hear like who was doing what. Like the teachers were like, I'll do this, you do that. Hey, can you do that? They were afraid to ask, I think, at first, and then it became at the end of the year just something like comfortable to give people different action plans. Yeah, who's doing what lesson? That was another really good one. And now in Google Docs makes it much. It's coming in. Yeah, Google Docs makes it much more easier. And now that they have that checklist too, you can check off who did what. Okay, so now our next one is parent communication. So let's go ahead and just kind of reflect for a moment. And thoughts on parent communication. Did it go well? Did it not go well, Danielle?
Oh, it was wonderful. We had complete homeschool partnership. The parents unfortunately had to get a window in to what the teacher has to do on a daily basis. So it really opened up those lines of communication. Sometimes though, what I found was that the teachers had their own expectations of how learning should be delivered, and we kind of sometimes had to break down some misconceptions and let our parents know why we were delivering our learning in some ways. So, for example, we found that parents really would have preferred for us to be online from 9 in the morning right through to night 3:30. And it was I did a webinar then with our parents in our school community to try to explain to them that asynchronous videos are incredibly powerful, and they're to be valued, and went down through and explained all of that to our parents, and also explained to them things like Kahoot quizzes, because sometimes if a parent is walking past in a synchronous lesson and if a teacher was doing a Kahoot quiz or the child was working, and it looks like a game to parents and they don't fully understand. They think, goodness, is that what they're learning? They're just sitting playing games. So during the parent webinar, I showed them, for example, all of the analytics that can happen behind the scenes in the Kahoot. And, that really just helped them understand what it was we were trying to achieve, and really helped buy-in from our parents. So yeah, we really appreciated the parents' engagement with their pupils' learning. And again, that's something that we definitely want to build on going forward.
Yeah, and I love this comment in the chat that she spoke with her parents, daily. And I think that's huge, because you were remote. The parents, like, they saw what was happening in their living room. And then using Remind. Our teachers, we use talking points, which is similar to Remind. It translates the language though. So it takes it a little bit further than Remind by that translation piece. Because we have a lot of EL students in our school district. And so parents, when we use Remind or email or whatever, that were EL, they were having a hard time understanding what was happening. And so with talking points, it's kind of taken that barrier and knocked it down. And before this school year, we had talking points. No one was using it but for the EL teachers. And after this school year, the amount of teachers that were using it with parents was insane. Like the day before conferences, and this is how you know if a program's really popular. The day before conference is talking points went down. Teachers were freaking out. Like they relied on it so much. And I think that was true though through COVID is we learned how much teachers actually use some of these programs because they went down. They couldn't hold the volume or the stress of COVID or whatever. But I think that's huge to use either Remind. And I think too, in this age, I mean, if you call me, I might not pick up, especially if I don't know your number. I'm not picking up. But if you send me a text message, I will respond to you. And I think that's how some of our parents were. They saw the school was calling and they're like, I'm going to have them leave a message because it's probably something my kid did. And I can't deal with that stress anymore because they had so much other things going on. But if it was a text message, they could read it real quick and they could respond or they could do whatever with that information. Which made it a lot more easier to communicate with parents rather than playing phone tag or whatever. And I also like that you said after hours, because with after hours and parents, whenever I would call a parent during the school day, they're at work. They couldn't call me back. And so like with a text message, they can respond whenever. They could be in a work meeting and respond or whatever they need to do. Oh, Respond has a translator now as well. That's awesome. So yeah, I think anything like that can really help too. And so those can just really help students. And I know a lot of teachers were creating videos and team newsletters and websites and all these ways for parents to get involved and know what was happening. So I hope that continues. I know it's a lot of work, but I think also it was a lot of work at the beginning, and hopefully it got less and less crazy, because I think too, I don't know, like parents that had multiple kids, one teacher is using this program, another teacher is using that program. And so we were trying to also kind of bring that in, like parents are so overwhelmed with just all this technology, all this learning that's happening. So just trying to remember that as well. And so my plus one is a student tracker. So there's a video right here, and you can just kind of see there's a bunch of different steps, but once you set it up, it's all set up and you can kind of track your students. So like their attendance, you can track how they did in ELA that day, math, and then you can kind of collaborate with your other teachers. You can see how much time they've spent on iReady, their science social studies, any notes you want to send. And then the parents, they get a version that looks like it's at the end of the video. I just have to find out when. Like it's coming, I think. Hopefully it's coming. I'll have to find the parent page. But the parents can log into this link. They get an autocrat email with a link that's unique for them. And then they can see each of how their student is doing. So then they can go in and kind of look over that information and that data. Again, it's like a link that happens and it's really cool. It is a lot of setup at the beginning, but once it's set up, parents can see, okay, how is my child doing? And they don't see all the other students. They just see their child. So it could just be helpful. Again, it's a lot of setup at the beginning of the year, but once it's set up, you have it for the whole school year. And then the parents can see like, how are they doing on attendance? How are they doing? And again, you could change any of these subject areas, but it's also nice for you because you can see all your students at once. Danielle, what's your plus one?
So I've put in e-portfolios and just put a video there for how to create them using Google Sites. Really, what the e-portfolio will be able to do for parents is provide a window into the classroom. How many times, I don't know if you have children of your own, when they come home from school and you say, well, what did you do today? What did you learn today? And they give a really vague answer. Oh, we learned about this. We learned about stuff. But with parents having an e-portfolio available to them, the link shared with them, it means they'll be able to see the product as it's being developed. So that idea of, the whole process being important rather than the finished product, because a parent might see the end products coming home, but didn't see all of the steps and the efforts that the child did all along the way, and all of those personal skills they developed. to be able to get to that end product. So I think using e-portfolios is a wonderful way to be able to allow pupils to assist with that and to get more involved with their child's learning. And a child just loves the encouragement and praise that a parent can bring. So if a parent can at any time just step in, see what they're working on, and give some tips or advice or talk to them about it, it's hugely motivational. And I really think it's something that I'm going to look at going forward. Other things you could use could be Blogger. You could have the child blog their work, and then that'll give the opportunity for comments to be left. But of course, you be careful with, moderating the comments or anything that goes on if it's live on the web. And then Wakelet might be useful as well. I love the emojis in Wakelet, so you could have parent or other peers in the class adding it. But I think digital portfolios and using the Google Sites, and it is definitely something that I'm going to implement next year. And I like the idea as well that you can also create a template. So I can have most of the structure almost set up for the pupils, and then send that out to them to build in their own content around it.
Yeah, I think portfolios are really helpful. And I think too, they can keep building upon those, so maybe they create it in 3rd grade and then 4th grade, they add to it and so on. And so by the time they're a senior, they have everything ready to go for college and that kind of stuff. So next school year, options, I think. What can we use for in-person and virtual meetings? And so can we allow those options? Because I know this year, all of our meetings were virtual. We did not let parents into our building. It was just the staff and students. We didn't even let volunteers in. And so can we allow those in-person meetings, but also virtual options for parents? And I think we can. Sending home video updates, maybe sending, personal emails about students' progress and sending those links to the e-portfolios. And then Andrea's asking in the chat, what did you use for the portfolios?
The one that we just shown just now, and Google Sites that link was for, yes, but also you could do Blogger or you could use Wakelet, but I think Google Sites would be really good, because with us using the Google tools, it allows everything to be embedded in really nicely.
Yeah, and I want to say I have a template. Let me see if I can look. It's like weird how you have to make a copy of a Google site. So you have to make it into a folder, share the folder, and then you can make a copy of the site. I think you can also add it to the list, I think. At the top of the templates. I don't know how to do that though. So let me see if I can find an example. And again, you can use all these different resources. As I'm looking, let's go ahead and look at what you guys said in the Google Slide collaboration. So we've got parent communication. Yeah, Wakelet for newsletters. Immersive Reader. Have you used Immersive Reader, Danielle?
No, I haven't. That's something I really need to look into. Yeah.
Yeah, so that one, it will read and it can break it up into syllables. It can do a lot of crazy stuff.
I'm just writing down Wakelet newsletter Wakelet here.
Yeah, and it's built
really
right
into, I love that.
Yeah, it's built right into Wakelet. Let's see here.
Another tool we're looking at for the video meetings is a website called School Cloud Meetings. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's maybe a UK-based thing. We did use Google Meet last year, but it was a bit of setup. I know we had the appointment slots and things, but some of our parents find it a bit hard to click on the appointment slots can be quite small. So we're going to use School Cloud Meetings, definitely going forward with that idea. And because in our school, I mean, we're secondary school, so in the UK that's age 11 to 18. So parents had to go around multiple teachers in a big, huge hall, and we're sitting in queues for perhaps half an hour sometimes waiting for a teacher to be free to speak to them. And now when we go forward with this type of technology and we're doing all our meetings with video meetings, I think we're going to look back at the idea of a parent having to take time off work to come and sit in our big hall, waste time in queues. I think we're going to look back at that and shake our heads and wonder what on earth were we doing? So this, again, the technology was always there, but needs must, and we've now learned, how to use it. So definitely, I think this will be a really great opportunity to move things on to support parents much more.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I found the portfolio while you were talking, so thank you. Well, let's see here. Let's see if I can bring it over. Okay, so we use Google Sites. Our elementary students, they use Seesaw. So they have their parents join. But what happens is the kids add a photo of themselves. They can add captions, they could add their name, and then they create like a welcome message, and they're able to just like we kind of keep it blank. So that way they can update their portfolio. And again, we want it to be them. So that they'll go in, they can change the themes. We walk through how to do all that. Right here, they have ELA, math, science, social studies, technology, and more. If you are creating a template for your students, I highly suggest having the template all laid out because you can't like push something back to them. So like once you send this to students and they make a copy of it, you'll have to, let's see here. I'll add the hello group because I don't care if you mess with this. And you guys can be editors and you can make a copy that way, or you can put this in a folder and then in the folder, share the folder as view only. And then the kids right click on the site and then they can make a copy of it. I don't understand why Google can't make you like force a copy of this into Google Classroom. I really don't get it. And it drives me crazy because I'm like, this should be something that they can do. But they can't. So here is the view of the site. But again, I added the group. So if you want to go in and look at it, you're more than welcome to. And then again, the kids go into their type, like wherever they're working in. So like ELA, they click ELA and they go into the topic. And then they can add their goals for ELA. And again, you could create templates for the kids, just make those before you push it out, or add it to Google Classroom and have them have that copy. And then they can embed, because you're able to embed different things onto Google Sites. So then they can embed those Google Docs, or they can embed those Google Slides, or maybe you have them create a video, have them put that video on their site. So it can be really, really helpful. And then let's see here for virtual meetings with parents, PowerPoint Live. I've never used PowerPoint Live, but I've heard a lot of good things. I feel like I need to start going into Microsoft. Let's see here though. If I can show immersive reader real quick. I don't know if I have an example with it. One of these should actually. So with immersive reader and Wakelet, so you can just share these out with your parents, and there's like different views you can pick, but this is the immersive reader sign. It's like a book with the speaker. And then if you click it, it opens up this window with the text, and you can have it read to you.
YouTube, choose start and amp.
You can also go in here, change your text. You want it bigger, smaller, change the font. You can change the theme. You can show the nouns if they're working on something like that. You can break it up into syllables. And then also right here is the picture dictionary, which you can turn on or off, but then it will show the image. And then also there's that translate, which I do not know another language. So I think this works really well. So like seconds, it translates it for you. And this is also in Flipgrid, and I feel like it's in something else. Wakelet, Flipgrid, and maybe somewhere else. I can't remember. I mean, you can just go to it too and copy and paste text over. So it's a really good resources for your parents. So thanks for sharing that one. All right, we're going to go to teacher collaboration, which we talked a little bit about, but let's talk a little bit more. So we want to know, how are you collaborating with other teachers? Oh, Pear Deck, yes. Sorry, that was the other immersive reader. Thank you, Kathy. That was going to drive me crazy. So how do you see teachers collaborating, Danielle?
Well, this year, I mean, it has been superb. As I said, the teachers were breaking out of their classroom walls, and they were working with teachers in other departments in the school and sharing their expertise. And really what we saw was a lot of teachers throughout the school then finding ideas, going out and being proactive and finding solutions to the problems, going on to Facebook groups, going on to YouTube, finding the answers, finding the resources and bringing them back and sharing them within the school. So really what it did was it made this huge upskill that we had to go through much more sustainable in terms of workload, because we were sharing with each other and sharing ideas and helping each other out. So nobody was working in isolation. It was a real team effort. And really that is the culture that we would love to see continuing going forwards. And I really do think now that is here to stay. And what we've seen in our school was much more staff really developing confidence in their own skills and being confident in showing other teachers how to do things, going into other teachers' classes and sitting with the other teacher in the class while they were teaching to assist them. Never before had we really seen that. People were working, within their own departments and of course sharing resources in their own area. For example, the maths department all share with each other, but really a real understanding now that, learning applies to all subjects and looking at those big broader issues and helping each other out. And we really developed this great trusted colleague network within the school. And I know where you are, Stephanie, you have coaches and assistants that can come into classes, and we don't really have that in Ireland. And what we did was we kind of nearly developed it ourselves. So really the collaboration was huge. We had, just the teachers taking ownership of their own professional development, trying things out themselves, taking risks, not being afraid to take risks, and doing it with the support of all of their colleagues, and not waiting, for example, for someone to show them how to do it or somebody telling them this is what you have to do. Very often going out and really just trying it themselves. And I think it was a great empowering experience and really showed us what we teachers can do when faced in that situation.
Yeah, and I just know for me, like I was able to just get on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, go to a group or search something, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know I needed that. Like this would make my teacher's life so much easier. And so then we were just we were dividing and conquering all of these different resources. And I think too, we didn't realize some of these things that were like, oh, that could make my life a lot easier if I just did this one thing. I know for me, mine was Edu Protocols this school year. And just like, I was going to my teachers like, hey, you want to try this activity? And they're like, I only see my students twice a week. No. And I'm like, okay, well, what if we did like a thin slides? It takes 5 minutes. And then they were like, okay, we can do that. And then it just, started opening up these communications for like Edu Protocols. They're very low prep and very good on students because they make the students do the work. And so I was able to go in and do some of those different things with teachers this year that I might not have done in a normal year because, 5 minutes this year was like huge compared to other years. And if you can accomplish something in 5 to 10 minutes, my teachers were like, hey, I'll take it. I want to see that accomplishments. So with the collaboration too, like that differentiation, teachers were able to divide and conquer and create all those different scaffolds and add additional ideas to different things. Yeah, sharing out loud. I love that. SOL. In the past, teachers may not share, but this last year, her teachers actually did start out sharing. So yeah, that's awesome. And I think too, our students benefit from us sharing. And I think sometimes, or some teachers, the culture was more of a, it was like a competition. Like, I want to be the best. My students will get the best. And this year I did not see that. It was like, what can we do to help all students? Which was a really good focus to kind of change our ideas on that. And so with that, my idea is a database. And so with this video, it walks through using Data Studio. And with Data Studio is, it creates this, like, I'll put the link for this in the chat, but it creates a database for your teachers. And I know for us, we had a lot of resources coming at us. And now we're like, okay, where is it all at? Yeah, the drive drives us nuts. And so right here, if you go to this link, this is like the final example of using Data Studio. And, oh, I can't access this report. I think I have to be on a different. Let me know if other people are having issues. And I can fix it after this session if it doesn't work. Nope, it's not working. Okay, I'll have to look at this. But it creates a database where all of these lessons get stored, and teachers just fill out a Google form, and then you could link it to a standard, you could link it to a subject, and then this is like the final project with that is like over here, you can see all the resources and you can filter. So then you're able to filter all these different resources. And again, like I know Drive was going crazy because everybody named it something different. And everybody named it something different that I didn't name it. And then Danielle, you want to share your collaborative PD model?
So yeah, this is something I'm going to be working with in September with my school. I'm part of our school senior leadership team. So in my role, I basically have to try to develop the strategy for all of the staff. So what I noticed was the increase in teacher collaboration, but I still think that we could go further with it. So that's sort of a model that I've kind of been thinking about that I'm going to develop and bring into school. The first wee step is just research. So basically empowering the teachers in teams to look at research on different aspects of learning. So for example, on feedback, on basically, personalized learning, mastery learning, on inquiry-based learning. So assign teams of teachers a different aspect to look at and do the research on. And then just like the jigsaw model that we would do with pupils, then they can become the experts in that particular area, particular field. And it really giving them choice. So the teachers can decide which one they can do, because I think choice is so important. You feel more invested in something whenever you've been given a choice to decide what you're going to do. So firstly, they would, spend time doing the research together in teams, and then looking at strategies going off, then actually implement it. Because I think so often in PD that we do, there can be a lot of outside experts coming in and speaking at us. And then you go back into the classroom and there isn't enough time to actually implement it, to actually put what you've learned into practice. And I think that's so key in anything that we do, to have that time. So in this PD model that I'm developing going forward in September, it's, allowing implementation time and then building up time for peer visits. So this is collaboration in that it's the teachers supporting each other. It's nearly the teachers coaching each other. It's not so much, a top-down approach. I think you call them administrators, or, your senior team coming in and being evaluative, going into a classroom and, looking at the standards that they should be doing. This is more a low risk, non-evaluative, their peer coming in because they've been working on the same team together, and they know that they're all just developing their understanding of the particular issue, for example, inquiry-based learning. So it's them working together and visiting each other's classes. And I think no matter what classroom we go into, we always pick up something. And it's really thinking about what's one takeaway or what's one steal that I'm going to take from my colleague's classroom, and going away from it, and then evaluating, of course, because we're looking to see what the best practice was and, how would it work within our particular school's context, because we can always look at pedagogy and look at the research, but we have to know what works in our own context and to make it fit there. And then finally, all of those teachers become nearly the go-to experts in the school on the particular field. And they're going to then share their expertise with others. So I think it's a nice way to really get teachers to engage in pedagogy, to engage in trying out and taking risks of some of these areas, and then sharing it out more widely across others.
Yeah, I love the idea of that jigsaw approach as well. Of everybody's, kind of taking an area or strategy, researching it, and then sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think too, with that next school year, there's a lot of talk about, those make and takes. So like, we're going to make this together and then everybody takes. I think we're going to see a lot of that next school year. The change in PD. I know I've talked to other coaches or admins, and they're like, before COVID, our PD was sit and get. We wanted to make sure we were using every moment. And I think we've learned that collaboration is PD. It's okay to allow teachers to collaborate and work on things on their own, and it doesn't always have to be sit and get. And I think that really came out during COVID. Better planning time. I know for teachers that are spec ed or teach multiple subjects, you were going crazy because you had so much to do. And I think figuring out how can we better plan and use that time differently during PD to allow those teachers to co-collaborate or communicate with one another. Looking at workloads and well-being. I know for me, there was some days where I was working 16 hours, and in June, I honestly needed a break. I could not keep going at the speed I was going because it was just so much. And so focusing on our well-being as well.
Completely. I mean, I agree that, it's admirable how much the teachers have upskilled this year, but that level is not sustainable. And it's now, we've got all of these ideas going forward, but these are not, I suppose, extra things to do. These are things that we want to do differently. So we're not putting more on our plates now. We're trying to do things more effectively rather than adding more. So I think that's so important. Very often us teachers, teaching is a vocation, and we do have our children's best interests at heart, but we have to remember that if we don't look after ourselves, we're not there to look after them.
Yeah. And then I don't see anyone added to the teacher collaboration. So feel free again to keep adding to these lists. And if there's any links or resources you think about, keep adding to it, because I know a lot of people will watch this recording, or this will be available for you later when you're thinking about back to school in August or whenever you go back, and you'll have these resources as well. Okay, we're going to look at troubleshooting. So there was a lot of tech programs that had issues. Did you deal with any of that, Danielle?
Yeah, completely. And it was straight on to Twitter, onto YouTube, somewhere to find out the answers. And it was incredible to see, globally, that we were all facing similar sort of issues and problems. And it was great that there was a global collective initiative to be able to solve these problems together.
Yeah, and I mean, I just remember, I think Google went down maybe a total of 3 times last school year. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, it cannot go down right now. Like, it just can't. And oh my gosh. But I think it was good because at the beginning, I was trying to fight every single fire that I could. And I realized I couldn't do it. And I think giving teachers time to problem solve allowed them to take those risks. They were able to try different things. They were able to rely on their students to problem solve. And then I would get an email, hey, I got it, don't need you anymore. And there's that boost of confidence when you figure out a problem. But I think also, like, our students had to learn how to problem solve without the teacher. Some of our kids were learning remotely or all year remotely, and they had to figure out, okay, why is this program not working? We had to communicate better. We had to use, Google Classroom and all these other resources. One thing that really helped was my teachers took screenshots. They took screenshots of issues instead of me trying to read their mind of what was happening. They asked for help. They were willing to try new programs where they might not have done it in the past. But they were willing to do that because they knew whatever they needed to do for their kids, they were going to do, which I think getting outside that comfort zone is going to help. So one thing I want to help my teachers do better is, hey, just hit Screencastify, record a video of what's going on, and then I can help you a lot faster. Because sometimes I'm reading in between the lines, or have your students create a video of what is the issue and send it off. And again, that Screencastify, that Loom, that whatever tool you decide to use, it doesn't matter the tool, can make it a lot faster to solve some of those help desk tickets or issues that they're trying to solve. And I was like, I could send those videos to the companies and say, hey, this is what my teacher is seeing. I don't know how to help them. And then the companies were able to respond a lot faster, having that knowledge up front rather than playing 20 questions. Danielle, yours resource was really cool. I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, it's just to follow on from what you're saying about the videos. I mean, I really actually felt that supporting the staff with the troubleshooting helped build the relationships with our staff. So, for example, just making a little Loom video to help solve their problem, but saying their name in the video so they knew that it was personally for them. It was really impactful, and it helped build those connections with the staff that you were supporting. And as well, our pupils seeing the staff work through problems with technology, and that modeling that adaptability and resilience it was brilliant for pupils to see that things don't always work perfectly first time, and here's what you can do, and it's okay. There's a plan B, or let's try something else, or it was great for pupils to see that everything doesn't have to be perfect all the time. So my level up then, it's really what I found during the pandemic was that teachers, yes, while they were guided by pedagogy, they also, took ownership of how this learning was going to look in this scenario themselves. I mean, we were in such a unique position, aren't we? That, we actually are probably the first set of educators that have worked through fully remote learning, fully, hybrid learning, fully, face-to-face, to be able to see all of those different types of learning. And we're able to now be very well placed to be able to see what works best in the particular mode. And I think we now have so much knowledge of that. And while we're guided by pedagogy before, some of it wasn't done, that research wasn't done in situations that we were working in. So we, as educators, developed the plan going forward. We knew what worked best. You could see very quickly then all of the educators coming on and saying, look, we need to build relationships with them first. We need to do this. We need good feedback opportunities. We need to make sure, we need to use tools like Jamboard to see their engagement, because, if they're, how do we know what their learning is? How do we check that, see whether their learning's visible? We had all of this that we were working towards. Nobody handed us a template. We did it, and I think we should be incredibly proud of ourselves that we did that. And, it's a great reassuring knowledge that we were able to do it. So I think going forward, why would we now step back? Why not going forward, take more ownership of doing action research projects in our own classrooms? We know we can do it. And that little resource that I've put on there, for example, is a little 5-minute action research plan done by an educator in the UK. And Ross McGill, he's fantastic resources. If you have a look at that link, there's so much on there. But here's just one simple one page. I love one pagers. So here's one page of the steps that you could do to do your own little mini action research projects in your school, in your classroom, to try to help to solve the problems that you see within your own context. And I think we should now, as educators, take confidence that we can do that. We have a lot of information to offer to the researchers. Very often it's the researchers pushing down to us, but perhaps we could work a bit more in collaboration with them and let them, know what we're seeing in our classrooms. Because coming back to what we've done, we solved this huge problem. We had to hit the ground running. We couldn't wait for a template to be handed down 6 months later. We did it within a week, even less in some schools. So I think that's something going forwards that we could maybe look at. Look at how we ourselves can solve some of these big problems in education for the pupils coming to us with these new skills that they're showing. So, I mean, teachers going back into the classroom, we're not going back as the same people that we were before the pandemic. Our pupils aren't going back as the same type of people that they were before. They have developed such great skills and dispositions that they didn't have before, and they developed them through need. So I think going forward, we should take a little bit more control of the research that's done in education, make it fit us and what we need, even more. And that idea of collaboration, I think, should be looked at. The idea of collaboration, more collaboration with universities who are doing research, and us educators playing a greater part in it.
Yeah, and I think too, someone in the chat said they love Jamboard. This could be added to a Jamboard activity, and you could collaborate again with your peers or even maybe students, together on a problem or do type of a design thinking process type of activity. And so again, I think next school year, we do need to take more risk. I loved what Andrea said above, where she was talking about fail without consequences. We were allowed to fail without consequences. It was like nobody knew what they were doing during COVID. And so it was okay to take risk. It was okay to fail. And I love that, failing without consequences. So how do we keep that culture going? Because when you do feel like you're okay to take risk and fail and all that kind of stuff, it's a positive culture usually. And I think too, don't give up. And I think this summer break, everybody is well-deserved. You need it. But next school year, rest up and don't give up again, and working with your team, work with your media specialists or whoever, when it's not working, just keep practicing and know it's okay. Have a plan B and keep going. And I don't know if we got any troubleshooting on here. I think people are getting tired. But now we're going to go to classroom management. So again, keep adding your ideas when it does come into classroom management. All right. Okay, so what did you see with classroom management during COVID? Did you notice a difference in Ireland?
So the idea that if I look at, I suppose, first of all, the idea of the online lessons in terms of the management, there really was a bit of a fuss about people's having their camera on and that, and making sure that people were engaged. And really, in the end, we started off as a school insisting, cameras on, and then the pupils just took control and started one by one, the cameras started going off. And then, we realized, what is it? What did we want to do? We wanted to make sure that people were engaging with the lesson, that they understood what we were trying to, deliver to them, that there were no misconceptions and that we could address them. And then it was back to our golden tool, Jamboard. And once we had Jamboard in the live lesson, we realized that it didn't matter if cameras were off. The pupils we were managing our classroom, we were managing our learning, because we could see the pupils' responses. And I just loved the idea of, putting on, for example, I teach exam-based questions, or exam-based subjects, so quite the older people, 17, 18-year-olds. So having exam questions on there and checking their answers live as they were going along, and each pupil having their own frame. And whenever the frame went quiet and there was no action on it, you could just prompt and go, hello, hello. Oh dear, I'm going to have to mark you down as non-engagement, and suddenly then the little cursor starts again. And it just, in some ways, I actually found it was a little bit easier to manage the classroom on a live lesson. I even found that some of the pupils who can be distracted by other pupils all around them, some of them were actually performing much better in their learning whenever they didn't have, I suppose, other pupils around that they often tried to get reactions from. It was just them working. Now, I know it's not ideal, people sitting working in isolation, and the breakout rooms were hugely beneficial for allowing opportunities for them to work together. But yes, I did feel that sometimes I got better quality work from my pupils whenever they were working with these digital tools than I would have always done in the classroom. And in the classroom, I love to use those little mini whiteboards, if you where they all hold up their answer for the equal engagement. And Jamboard was just a digital way of doing that. And it really has helped me to manage all the learning in the class.
Yeah, and I think too, with classroom management, we had teachers that had classes of like 30 kids. And when we went to hybrid, it was only 15. And that was huge. Like just the classroom management and like being able to help kids when they needed help was just really nice. And so one of my teachers, she did like a You Do You activity during this time. And what she did is it allowed students to track their goals. And so it was a Google form that the kids filled out, and then using DocAppender, they get a report on their goals. And then she's able to go in and she's able to comment. So this is the report from the Google form. And again, they're able to see their results in real time. Right as soon as they fill them out, then they can see how they're doing, which just kind of helped our teachers and our students being able to understand, like, okay, here's where I'm at. Here's my goal for the day. Did I meet it? Did I not? Am I close to the week? And so just setting those goals, and then teachers able to have those conferences with students. And then you had Text My Teacher.
I know I did. At the end of this year, I did lots of little focus groups with my pupils to get their feedback on how remote learning went for them, anything that we as teachers need to learn about the experience or what worked well for them. And time again, from every group that I did, it came back and they said, oh, I like being able to text my teacher. And I was thinking, you text your teacher? I don't understand. And then I realized most of them were using mobile phones as their device of choice during home learning. And then that was it. They were sending private messages, private comments in Google Classroom to their teachers, and they loved that. And I mean, it's amazing to think that the simplest of things that can be done was actually one of the most impactful for our pupils. They just love the idea and the security of knowing that their teacher was right there, that they could send them a message. And, you know, we had our expectations set up. They knew not to expect a response from a teacher at a crazy, you know, time of the day, but just knowing that they could drop a message in that their peers couldn't see, because very often they didn't want to ask a question in a live lesson or ask it in the stream, which was public. Then it just really helped them whenever they were working from home. And that's definitely something that we're going to keep going forward. And I found that our quiet, introverted pupils really thrived by having private comments. And pupils who very often, you know, in the classroom don't speak up, or, you know, here they were and they had a space for their voice to be heard. And definitely going forward, that is something that we're going to implement. We're going to have all of our teachers in the school are going to have an ask a question section on their Google Classroom, a space for them to go in and be able to contact their teacher. I mean, you would think, I mean, I thought when I was in face-to-face that I was supporting those quiet pupils, you know, by going down to them and talking to them and asking them. But actually, I saw much more engagement when they were able to text it later. So that's our phrase in school, text my teacher. And that's just simply the private comment feature in Google Classroom, which we're definitely going to keep going forwards.
Yeah, I love that, text my teacher, because you're right. They were using cell phones or whatever they could. And a lot of people in the chat, they're saying Nearpod was really great because they could see what their students were doing. Same with Pear Deck, Go Guardian. We use a program called Hapara, which I think is very similar to Go Guardian, where you can see the students' screens and you can see what they're doing. You can filter their browsing and have them focus in, because I know some students, they were having issues focusing in on the lessons. So all these great tech programs that really did help us throughout the school year. And I think too, like, it's important that we were able to check on their SEL, their social emotional learning, focus on those standard operating procedures, because we had to create new procedures for online learning. Like, you log into this, you do this, you know, it wasn't anymore like, can I use the bathroom? Like, you just went online, you know, which is going to be interesting when we go back, and creating that classroom vision as well. So keep on adding to this document throughout as you guys find different resources and think of things, or as you're reflecting, just feel free to go back and add to this. We can build that community together on what we kind of need to focus in on. But thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed collaborating with you today and just kind of reflecting on what COVID will look like next year. So just think about, how can I kind of take those lessons I was doing this year, continue it, or how can I make them better for my students? So I'm really excited to dig into some of those resources that Danielle shared as well. All right, and I just threw our Twitter handles into the chat, and feel free, if you're following along with us, throw your Twitter channel hashtag, or not hashtag, handle into the chat as well, so we can follow you as well. But if you guys need a certificate of attendance, I know some schools require that. I'm going to throw that link in there. It's just a quick feedback form, and it asks like how long the session was. So feel free to fill that out. It is auto-generated. So if you misspell something and you don't get it, it's probably because you misspelled your email or something like that. So if there is any mistakes, just fill it out again. And then you're able to get that certificate of attendance if your school district needs it, or if you just want a pretty certificate to show that you attended the session, feel free to fill that out as well. And then if you are interested in more, we have other sessions coming up. I'm going to throw the link for the Google group again, but feel free to join. It's a great community, and thank you all so much for joining us today. Anything else you have going on today, Danielle?
Well, today I'm going to join this new group I saw on Twitter called the Global Connections. Or if you have a look, we'll drop a link on later into our slide deck. It looks fantastic. It's a Flipgrid collaboration between teachers, just what we were talking about today. So I'm going to make my video for it and join it today.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Do you have the link on you?
On our slide deck, on the collaboration section, I dropped in the link to it. I think it's Codebreaker are doing it.
Okay, I've heard a lot about Codebreaker. I need to learn more about this because it's all over Twitter.
And I think it's got great, yeah, it shows great promise. It's basically an asynchronous video place for teachers to collaborate and share. It looks fab.
Okay, I just threw the link in there in the code, so feel free
Thank
to
you.
check that out as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter.